Hi, Dr. Kobi Michaeli, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies. Thanks for being with us here. Just to mention a bit more on this for our viewers, Gilad Shalit was released in exchange for 1,027 Palestinian prisoners here for Gilad Shalit back in 2011 when he was finally released. What's Hamas doing this time, releasing this footage? Are they signaling that they want another deal, the release of these two citizens and the IDF soldiers they hold the bodies?
I think that they are signaling that they are in a very deep problem, and they are trying to manipulate the Israeli public, hoping that the Israeli public will pressure the Israeli government or the Israeli political echelon and the IDF as well. I think that we have to understand it as a signal that indicates about the problem that Hamas faces vis-a-vis its constituency in the day after the last operation. They are trying to divert the public discourse. They understand pretty well that they are in a very deep problem vis-a-vis their constituency, vis-a-vis Egypt, and vis-a-vis Israel. And therefore, they are trying to use the last and the ultimate weapon that they know, which is the psychological weapon. And they are trying, as I say, to manipulate the public consciousness, hoping that it will help them to find a new path that will recover their position or their current status.
Many of the critics, when Gilad Shalit was released, argued that the bar in that deal, the 1 for 1,027 ratio, it simply set the bar too high for any future deals to even be possible. Now that we're in that situation, do you think it's possible? Can a deal be reached between the sides?
I'm really skeptic in this regard. I don't think that the probability of such a deal actually exists. Due to 2 or 3 main reasons. First of all, Hamas leadership is under a sort of euphoria, and they are very, I would say, enthusiastic about their so-called achievements in the last campaign, and they know that they have to reach to a very significant achievement with regard to the prisoners, because this is something which is very meaningful for the Palestinian public, and therefore their demands are very high, even higher than the last bar that you have mentioned with regard to a Gilad Shalit deal. The second reason is that Israel understands pretty well that what has happened with Gilad Shalit was a strategic failure, and this is something that cannot occur once again. And mainly when we are talking about unfortunately bodies of the soldiers, not about the live soldier. Thirdly, I think that we have to understand the broader context, and we have to understand that if Israel will accept Hamas demands with regard to this deal, it means that this is something that will encourage Hamas and will strengthen Hamas in the broader context with regard to Jerusalem and with regard to the Palestinian Authority. This is something that might indicate that Hamas actually achieved something which is very meaningful after the last operation. And this is the last thing that Israel can allow itself in the broader context.
Now, on the psychological aspect here, do you think this has an impact? He's released the footage of Gilad Shalit, this audio recording, as esoteric as it is. Does it have an impact in Israel?
Yes, of course, it had an impact. But I think that the Israeli public is more matured this time. I think that the Israeli public understands pretty well that this is a sort of imitation of the strategy of Hezbollah, of Nasrallah. Actually, what Sinwar tries to do is to imitate Nasrallah, hoping that it will be something which is influential, something that will be effective with regard to the Israeli public, and something that will bring him and Hamas closer to the realization of the deal that they are seeking to reach. But I think that the Israeli public is much more sober. I think that the Israeli public understands what might be the consequences. And I think that this time it will not work for Hamas.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kobi Michal.